Chapter 17 Witchfall. Witches typically operated best in groups of 3. Triads they were called. Working together, witches could perform much greater magic than they could on their own. Triads were usually used for rituals which took too much time for combat. This made them no less dangerous, as in large groups, multiple rituals could be used on important figures in the world. Kings and empires could change overnight if a group of 50 witches got together with an agreed-upon agenda. This was impossible as witches didn't work together in large groups under ordinary circumstances. Covens were the exception. A coven of witches was bad enough. Even the city of Xing would react, despite being sick of war and dealing with the inner turmoil that came with it. Actually, the reason this coven got as large as it did was because of the war. The rich and powerful were quick to attempt to put an end to witches for hundreds if not thousands of years. As such, an organization was formed, simply called the Witchblades. While they could almost be supplemented by mercenary or military forces, those with the knowledge and means to destroy magical threats would be sent in. They were essentially a combination of witch slayers and occultist experts. They weren't particularly numerous, and considering the wars of recent times, they waned. Interest in local threats went up during peacetime. A single Witchblade's advice could turn a small military force into a true witch hunt, especially if the witch or hag was unaware. In this case, it was unlikely the Witchblades would be enough. They were too few in numbers alone. Governments usually sent disposable volunteers in the form of adventurers or people hoping to make a quick coin to determine the urgency of the threat. An easy way to gauge most threats was how easily a group of adventurers or volunteers were wiped out. It was a cruel, but all the same, effective tactic. Darius had to read up a little bit on witches before he even understood this much. He was not worried about Meredith falling to them, but it was true that such threats were being unchecked. Meredith no doubt would give him a detailed report on the threat level and the appropriate amount of force to send. Most inexperienced scouts think that everything available needs to be sent, when a small team will do. Witches were difficult to gauge in terms of power. When they congregated and made pacts, their ability to create trouble could legitimately call for a small army. Darius looked over the medical records to see how many were cured and how many still needed help. Even with the massive funds he was receiving in exchange for a cure, he still did not have the resources to treat large groups, and additional treatments might be required later. Nephelite was like a cancer. Remove some dark dust only to later have symptoms relapse. Alice kept busy looking into Nephelite and mastering it at every angle, leaving him to manage a few who were skilled enough to handle the process. Isla was one such person, and turned out to be skilled enough to cure one after another, tirelessly working to cure as many as possible with her magic. It was truly admirable, but there were nearly 2,000 who needed treatment, and that was just those in Darius's unit. There were more, many more elsewhere. In short, the work might be endless, but profits would be formidable. He had little issue treating his former enemies as well. Despite the good he was doing for men he knew and cared about, always in the corner of his mind he was thinking of Blackmaw and the cruel truth that everything dies and that everything would die. They needed to limit the use of magic. To do that, he wasn't even sure of what he would need. At the very least, he knew he would need money. Money was a simple but necessary ingredient for any plan he might make. For now, he wished to focus on tasks the public would accept, gain resources, power, and influence until at last he was ready. What more could he do? It was a constant question in the back of his mind. What else could he do to deal with the problem? He recalled what the observer had said. When a sentient being dies, the magic within their body decays with them. This is the most common loss of magic. It is greater than any misuse of magic. This was one of the many things he was told by that floating crystal with a voice. He sighed, wondering if there might be a way to take the magic out of someone before they died, or as they were dying. He couldn't know. As much as he hated it, he needed Alice. She was the monster he hid and the devil he dealt with. But she may yet prove their salvation or damnation. At last he reached Scipio's room. He was alive, moving, groaning. He let a smile sneak upon his face. "You look like a damned corpse." Scipio was standing, but his hands were shaking at the strain of being up. "I am a damned corpse, or half of one thanks to you. The particles were removed, but there was a lot of damage which still needs to heal. The venom may be gone, but it damaged my body where I might never recover. I tried shooting a bow. My grip is weak, my fingers are numb, and I'm not strong enough to pull a bow back properly." He looked to Augustana, who smiled. "We've made good progress. Magic has sped his recovery after the iron sand was removed. At least now it is possible for him to recover." Darius was happy to hear it. "Augustana, may I speak with you?" Scipio interrupted whatever he was going to say to her. "Do you have work for us?" Darius rather flatly disagreed with Scipio doing anything right now. "Not for you. Not yet. I need you healed. Augustana, I intend to send Meredith on a mission. I'm getting reports it might be more dangerous than I originally thought. I was hoping you would join me on a trip to see him. He may need our help soon." Augustana's pupils may not have been visible, but it was clear she looked to Scipio. "I will go if you allow Scipio to accompany us." Scipio smirked. "Is that acceptable?" He still looked like crap. Darius didn't consider long. He gave a quick nod. "Only if you pack and dress yourself. I won't give you any leniency just because you're half dead. You with me?" Scipio saluted with a finger out of place. "To the last breath." Augustana's eyes flared up with light. Yes, she was in. It originally took him 2 months to clean himself up enough to see the Gauss estate, but now with fewer regulations and his ability to clear Augustana, they could be there quickly if they ran the horses hard. Darius walked to his team of medical staff. "Continue with the work. I'm leaving Isla in command of overseeing the cure." One could hardly believe he was leaving, or even worse, leaving things in the charge of a 16-year-old girl. "Colonel Orange, she's a child. You should have seen the one who invented the method of the cure," he thought. "She is qualified, one of the few who is, and you will give her every respect. You will be her sword when she is disrespected. Use force if you have to, but she needs to be in charge. That girl will one day own the company I manage. See to it she is taken care of. Even if force is required, see to it that others obey her. Understood?" The soldier nodded. He gave the men around her a fierce glare. "Miss Gaust, the medical staff are at your disposal. Security will be informed within the hour." A look of panic overtook her. Darius was dumping the duty on her, but he suspected, very strongly, that he was going to be needed elsewhere. Chapter 18. Lorandrum Deepwood. Mina stood in a simple but surprisingly sturdy wooden cage. She made no effort to escape. Her eyes gleamed in a lost daze. It was as if she looked into the distance, seeing something beautiful others could not. She made many mistakes. For one, she let her guard down in a place she knew to be a potential death trap. 2, she assumed, as many would, that a child would be something to protect it, instead of something to destroy. Abigail had the form of a child, true, and at one point was a child, but Abigail, if indeed that was her true name, was a witch. She was the daughter of a matron. Hags and witches reproduced through unusual means. They might shapeshift into the form of a beautiful woman and through dark rituals convert the child in their womb to a powerful spellcaster, usually done through pacts with otherworldly beings. They also kidnapped children and babies. Those with potential became witches. Those who were not were often sacrificed or used as materials. Most adults were useless. Men and women were seen as breeding stock or slaves at best. At worst, their organs and eyes were used as ingredients for otherworldly magics. One of the mistakes Mina made that day, by far the worst, was revealing her name. The first and last was all it took. In an attempt to comfort the child, she introduced herself, saying her full name, and hugged the very thing that killed her companions. Abigail, like many witches, could teleport back to her shelter if the proper connection was formed in advance. It was formed, and it was relatively easy to take Mina with her. The shape of the child she used was a child from the village. She had to switch every now and again before her face and skin shifted to the unnatural. Her beauty would fade if she used that body too long and without sacrifice. Mina was one such possible sacrifice. However, she was a water priestess. Mina had uses to the coven. The triad would be rewarded. The eldest of the 3 witches of her triad approached, a witch who specialized in hypnotism and spells which impacted the soul. She had left charms throughout the village to calm and relax any who entered. They would turn away, or even better, let their guard down for easy meat. She was a glutton, of course, and had recently feasted on the flesh of a man. They had more than they needed for their coven. The woodsmen had no heeded their warnings, and now wrath was upon them. "A priestess! What fortune have you brought us, little Abigail?" Abigail had a giggle which belonged to a devil more than a child. "Her name is Mina Vard." A name! Was it true? The oldest approached. Maud her name was, although she'd never say a name out loud where it might be used by an enemy witch. Certainly not her full name. Mina made that mistake to her own end. "Mina Varn," she said, amplifying her magic of hypnosis. Mina fell to her knees, now in a full trance state. She was in a state between sleep and awake, on her knees, on the floor inside a wooden cage. The cage was not impressive, and nor did it need to be. Mina was already captured and helpless to them. She has not birthed yet. She is young, fertile, and her offspring shall produce a powerful gift to the matron. This one is superior breeding stock, and as such should have a child in service to the coven. Who do we have who has the blood of a mage? Another of the witches, named Alyssa, let out a short, quick call to a bat perched near her shoulder. She had the ability to speak with the beast, and the tiny creature served her well. "Vinny speaks to me. Intruders approach." Abigail didn't seem to care. "We could always use Kai. He has been doing good work with cleaning, and could use a reward," suggesting a male with magic while clutching her doll. She wore a belt of jangling stuffed animals. Bears, cats, and a bird that seemed quite different from the one seen in the sky earlier. Maud listened to her in her sisterhood. Alyssa gave it some minor thought. "Kai should do. Listen well, Mina Varn. Kai shall be your new master. You will obey him and produce offspring." Maud, the older sister, scowled and scolded her. "Do you think yourself High-Kai, fool? You cannot bind this one to Kai's will without her knowing Kai. It is impossible. Do not make your teacher call you foolish a second time. Go now, fetch Kai. We shall bind this one to him, and from her womb will come a powerful witch, one that could perhaps be a matron one day." Alyssa obeyed, flipping her cloak and shifting herself into a bat. She took flight away from the campfire outside of their hovel. In time she would return. Maud spoke again to Mina. The elder hag looked hideous and poorly shaped. Boils and warts littered her face, and a single eye seemed dead to sight. Her motions were done in a strange manner, and her eyes fixated deeply into Mina's. The dead eye shifted to Mina, who stayed on her knees as Maud spoke. The trance state deepened, and her instructions were given. "Wait here until a master is decided for you. Do not attempt to flee or oppose the coven. When your master is chosen, you will obey and produce offspring. You are not to allow harm to him or yourself." To them, Mina was little more than a prized beast, meant to breed with another beast. Abigail giggled at the look on Mina's face. "She looks like she's about to drool. How is it that you're able to bewitch lesser beings so easily?" Maud dismissed the compliment. "My skill falls short of others. While our coven is strong, there are those in other covens who are stronger still. In time you will perhaps learn how to bind a soul and mind to your bidding." Abigail looked away to the forest. "Didn't she say there were intruders on their way?" Maud did not seem to care as she stirred a cauldron. Bony fingers stirred up a bit of broth which smelled foul. "They will not make it past the traps. The magic is strong. They will be asleep long before they reach this place. They are no threat." Abigail supposed they wouldn't be. "What about the witch-blades? They're on their way, right? If what those we captured earlier said was true." Maud sipped from the broth. "It is. They would be unable to lie to me. You didn't fear the witch-blades. They lack the strength to stand against us. No, it is the great coven I fear. Their ambition has grown too strong. I fear they may soon be upon us. This is why we prepare. Witch-blades are nothing to us, but Hecate, the Grand Matron, has too many and too powerful allies. She alone is a threat to our coven. It will take much to defeat her if her eyes gain upon us." Abigail petted her doll and played with her hair. "You sound so scared of her. Is she really so frightening? Why are we not on her side, if this is so?" Maud spoke while holding up a small number of golden hair threads. Abigail November Corinth. Fear struck Abigail, and she began to weep tears, realizing she had displeased the elder of her triad, one who knew her name and held a piece of her hair. You know your place. It is time I remind you. You are not to do harm to our coven. You will not cast allegiance to the grand coven. Powerful it may be, but you are ours. Do well to remember that, child. Abigail nodded, and her body stopped shaking. She inhaled and exhaled as exhaustion overtook her. She gripped the dirt hard and tried to compose herself. They were all just big meanies. Big, useless meanies who were jealous that she was young, beautiful, and would one day surpass them. She had already proven herself. They were the ones who foolishly clung to their stubborn pride. They should simply join the grand coven. Hecate would take them with open arms and a smile. Under her protection, she doubted there would be much to threaten her. It was at this moment Maud noticed something. She snarled, "My wards fall. They approach." Abigail was regaining her composure still. "Your wards are activated, then?" Maud shook and dropped her little wooden bowl. "No, not active. They have fallen. Somehow they have disarmed them. I will have to face them. Go, fetch Elissa, and together we can face them. Join me as soon as you can. Now!" Abigail obeyed, dropping her little cat doll on the floor only to have it shift and sprout great shadowy tendrils. The shadow and shifting energy came to resemble something like the form of a large cat. Abigail jumped on and rode it to meet up with Elissa, while the elder of the triad dealt with the strangers. No doubt she could buy time if not enslave them to herself. Still, if she died that might be convenient. She smirked at the idea that her captor might fall. It was at this moment that Meredith, two weapons in hand, came out of the woods. He spoke to Maud and noticed the freshly made tracks leading away. "Here, for the water priestess," holding up his weapons with a ready-to-strike stance. Maud held up a hand and circled around the fireplace, keeping her mannerisms and posture submissive. She lowered her head and bowed, her voice shrill and fearful. "I mean you no harm, sir. Please, take what you will and go." Meredith motioned to the cage. "Let her out of the cage. We need her." Maud held up a hand and hid her face from the light. "Yes, yes, of course. You are here for the woman. Yes, you should find it easy to open the door. She is not locked inside." She was not tied up inside either. Untying the bars would be easy. Meredith slowly stepped over to the cage, not taking his eyes off the witch. The witch made strange motions. He didn't know what she was doing. She whimpered, but slowly her eyes looked at him. Curious, she thought. Her magic wasn't working. Any number of her magics should have worked by now, but it was as if the magic could not get near him. A force pressing against her magic. She didn't know of such a thing. Perhaps he had help from the witch-blades. Had they come up with something like this? No, he was most certainly not a witch-blade. He was something else. If her magic would not work, she needed to stall for time. "She is yours. Please, let us make a deal. If you take the girl, you shall live in peace?" Meredith shook his head. "I don't make deals with witches." Well, she thought, it was worth attempting. She decided to wait until his guard lowered, but it never did. She studied him for openings while taking a cowering form. It was strange. She couldn't get any of her magic to reach him. If she could just get one opening. Yes, if she waited, he would open the knot on the cage. Good. Just what I need. She readied herself. "Please, sir, take her and go. We just want to be left alone. No more blood. Just leave us to the forest, and here we will stay," Maud said in a shrill and fearful voice, not her own. Meredith kept one sword pointed at her, and with his other hand used his other sword to do a quick chop to the rope. It took a few chops, as it was thick, but it was enough to loosen the cage door from its binding. It was difficult to do a proper stroke without looking, but he managed. He should have just untied the small knot, but he dare not look away from the witch. Ordinarily, the idea was to get men to focus on her, and then she could bewitch them. But her magic did not work. Yes, it was clear how he got past the traps. Those weapons he held. Definitely those weapons. The black blade was a metal she did not know. What was it? Some enchantment of cold iron? No, never had something been so potent. He was fixated on the cage and his guard would lower soon enough. He opened the door to the cage, but Mina did not move. She did not respond to his command to come with him. "Let's move." There she stayed not moving, and Meredith pointed both weapons back to the witch. "What did you do, hag? Is she under some spell? Release her." The witch shook and took a bargain. "If you promise to leave in peace, I'll let her go. I swear it." She knew he wouldn't take it, but she needed to stall for time. Meredith wasn't used to dealing with witches. He looked at Mina for a moment, then back to the witch. He didn't answer. He just stared and waited. Let her go. The witch repeated her swear, hoping he would take the bargain. "Promise to leave in peace. I will release the girl from the magic and you may leave. No one will chase you or follow you. Just go." Meredith smirked. "So basically, your magic is keeping her bewitched." She had hoped he'd take the deal. It could have backfired, of course. She would have bound him to the deal, making him unable to raise a hand against her or her kin. He would have to leave and go back to the city. The girl would indeed go with him, only then to return. Such was the loophole she saw in the deal, as well as many others to use. But it was clear this man would kill her. She shouted and demanded, "Restrain him!" Mina looked up and launched a splash of water which danced around Meredith but did little, other than grab his legs. "Damn, she's under control. Of course she is," muttered Meredith. Maud fetched a dagger from near the fireplace stew and raised it to cast magic. Her voice was weak and intense pain shot through her body. Iron slit her throat. Her kidney cried out in pain. Her throat was slit? How? He was not near her. Then she caught a glimpse of her attacker. It was Kenson. She was so fixated on Meredith that it was easy for an experienced witchblade to sneak up on her. Using magic to go undetected and being proficient in stealth was all it took. The daggers were in her, and that was that. Rage filled her as she let out a gargled cry. Meredith launched 3 black blades into the witch, who then spit out black and red and fell to the ground. As she fell, Mina kept trying to capture Meredith. Dodging water was not easy. "Stop!" he demanded, but she could not hear. Kenson told him, "She is awaiting a master to be chosen for her, yes? That is what they said. She needs a master to obey. The witch is dead. She needs a new one." Meredith named the first one that came to mind, Augustana. No response. She kept the glazed look. She made another futile attempt to capture Meredith, who along with Kenson was very difficult to capture with just her in pursuit. Then Meredith got a better idea. Sai! He was the only person Meredith knew that she also knew. She seemed to snap out of the trance she was in. She stopped and looked around. "Where am I?" Kenson told her, "We're with the Witchblades. We're getting you out of here. You want to escape, yes?" She was going to say yes, but she could not. Her legs would not move. "I can't," she said, not understanding why she couldn't just follow them. Kenson remembered. She cannot flee. Well, I suppose the witch forbade her from doing so. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial. "Drink." She took a moment before she finally nodded and gulped it down. She wasn't sure what it would do. They didn't have much time. Other witches would arrive soon, and there were injured and poisoned men to heal. Mina felt dizzy and very sleepy. In her groggy state, Kenson picked her up, and she seemed to have an almost instinctual need to resist. Luckily, the drug he gave her was putting her to sleep very quickly. It was time to carry her out.